Welcome to the Backpacking and Blisters podcast, everybody. I've got with me, co-hosting with me today is a YouTuber, podcaster, Boy Scout leader, driver of long distances without getting any tickets, Andy Parrish. How's it going today?
I'm doing pretty well. And, it's great to be here, Carl. Carl Mandrioli is famous for his sayings, before criticizing another person, it's wise to walk a mile in their shoe. That way, if they don't like your criticism, you're a mile away and you've got their shoes.
And you've got their shoes. That's right. Got to make sure they're the same size, though. Otherwise, blisters, causing blisters there.
They're not chasing you in bare feet. So
that's true.
You're one up there. You can throw them off a cliff. You're good. Just, pack them out. Leave no trace, right?
Yeah, right.
I can't say that.
That sounds like what you want to do if there's like a bear chasing you. Just grab their shoes and toss them off the cliff.
Run. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Get the head start. Hey, really appreciate you joining the show and co-hosting with me today while Derek's out and about, shopping at Costco or doing whatever he does. So, all right. So for those of us that aren't familiar with your content, who are you? What's your content all about? Give it to us.
World famous. So from podcasting standpoint, there's like Joe Rogan, you guys, and then like 1,000 more than me. No.
Okay. We're actually ahead of Joe Rogan at this point, to be honest.
That's impressive. Andy Parrish Outdoors on YouTube. I do all kinds of trip videos, tips and tricks, a lot of educational stuff. I've kind of got my start in the scouting community. So started working with teenagers that were wanting to get into the outdoors, never been into the outdoors before, teaching them, and then I found there was really an issue with not having a lot of great content out there for people that just wanted to come from that environment, what kind of gear, we're going to summer camp, we're going to Philmont in New Mexico, we're doing 2 weeks, what kind of gear. So I really started building out things that cater to that environment, and then it kind of blew up from there. So I've done trips to Boundary Waters and Colorado and Smoky Mountains and all over the place, and just have a blast.
So wait a second. So if you're targeting, people that are new to backpacking, but also teenagers, because there's not a lot of content, are you using teenage slang and stuff on your videos?
Yeah, no. I have a couple videos where I've brought my teenagers along, and they enjoy actually taking the camera for a while. And usually they do it without telling me. So I'll get home and I'll start editing video, and here's my 14-year-old that has a 2-minute clip about I have no idea what he's talking about, but it usually makes its way into the video. So I'm not trying to pull that off because it would just look funny.
That's what I'm getting at. I would probably enjoy that, but yeah, I'm not so good with I don't know. I was throwing around the word Sussy this past year as a teacher. Yeah, hey, is that Sussy? And the kids thought that was funny. So yeah, that means suspect. That's suspect for those of you that are not around kids. So that's looking sussy. Anyway, there you go.
We're learning.
Who's to say you can't learn something from the podcast?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So and speaking of kind of taking teenagers out, you recently went on a backpacking trip here in Colorado.
Yep.
And strangely, you were in Lost Creek Wilderness the same time I was there.
Yep.
We didn't cross paths. We were on different trails. It's a pretty large wilderness area. And so I think that's going to kind of play out with our topic today. But I also want to ask you some specific things about kind of the gear that might have worked and failed. So we'll get to that later on in the episode. But today we've got how to bring or be a new backpacker.
Yeah.
How to bring or be. So this should hit, hopefully, everybody. The only person I think it doesn't hit is the person who's going solo and wants to keep themselves and never wants to invite anybody. So that person, I don't know.
They're out there. I mean, that type of person, you might be getting into the wilderness because you want a little solitude. So I get that. Right. I get that from time to time. And I love doing the solo trips. And I think there's something that you get that's unique about those. But, getting out in a group, being a little more social. I really enjoy watching people for the first time, hit the mountaintop, see the views, the vistas, all that stuff. Make the big climbs, and they hate it during the climb, but they love it when it's all done. So there's something rewarding about that too.
There is. And yeah. So I think hopefully for the folks that maybe go solo, we'll still talk about some tips and tricks for sure.
Yeah.
But if you're an experienced soloist, maybe we'll inspire you to invite some new folks, because it is fun to introduce people to backpacking. And I've done that a lot, and it sounds like you've done that a lot too. And it sounds like we're on the same page with going with other folks. Like if you're, I mean, you had a 15-person strong group out in Colorado. I was with 12, and I love the big groups, and I love just, the variety of folks I can talk to. So
big age range for your group?
Yeah, because we had like 3 different families. So we had, who's the youngest? How old were they? They were like, it was like a 10-year-old, I guess, was the youngest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All the way up to our mid 40s. So there you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But we weren't doing, you did some heavier miles. So ours was a little bit more simple. So we had some dogs that were like 3 years old. So that's the youngest.
Okay. Well, that's like 21 years old, right? So
yeah, I don't know. I'm not a dog expert. Okay, let's get to it. All right. So we each came up with 3. You came up with more than 3.
Yeah, it's hard paring down. It always is. I do these lists of like, my top 5 choices for this, and it's like 12, and I have to weed it out. So we're doing that on the fly as we go.
We are. I'll go first. That way you can kind of see how I'm structuring mine.
Yeah,
and if
there you go.
Yours are structured differently. Like that's fine.
We'll set the bar low. There you go.
we'll bounce around. Okay. So this is like common mistake number 1, and I think I've made this. A few times. I definitely made this with my buddy Derek here. Is if you're inviting somebody along, or if you're planning your first trip, pick an easier trip.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that could hit a lot of things. Lower mileage, lower elevation gain, easier terrain. Not during like the winter time when you've just had a heavy snow. And I just think that it's okay to like ease somebody into something. And so here's where people get like, they have a hard time, is like, if there's somebody that is an athlete that's very good at their sport, and they're, like, for example, we brought an ultra runner along on one trip, and it was a challenging trip, but it was one of his first trips. And so you're thinking, okay, this guy runs 100-mile trail races. Like, how stinking easy is this backpacking trip? I think it was like day 2 towards the beginning, we were taking gear out of his pack because he just hadn't trained with a heavy pack.
Yeah.
He was tearing up his feet with blisters. He just didn't know how to prepare specifically for a backpacking trip. And he was like a newbie, and that's fine. And so I made that mistake with him. Pick an easier trip. Sounds like you agree with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the ones, the extra. So I'm crossing that one off. I'm not going to use it. We're not. Okay. That one's
that was on your list.
But that was on my list. And I've kind of got 2, one for geared towards the people that are taking people out into the wilderness, that it's, they're the veteran taking a newbie. That's on my list for that veteran. Make it easy. For the veteran, it was lighten the load. That was kind of the theme that I used. So make it easy on them. Choose an easy route that fits their capabilities, the length of time, the mileage, the vertical, the altitude, all that stuff plays in. So a lot of newbies might not consider all those different factors. So totally agree with that.
And where it gets really bad is if you're talking like a spouse or like girlfriend, boyfriend. You're talking like you invite somebody like that, and then you make it too hard on them. Like that's like long-term negative effects right there.
Yeah. Well, and I always have the kind of viewpoint that I want them to actually do it again, or want to do it again. So if I make it so brutal, I have a great time, but it's miserable for them. They're never doing it again. So make it a little easier for them. I totally get that. So let me then flip on the other side and take from the point of view of the newbie. Okay. Since that's a great idea for the veteran hiker.
It is okay. Yeah. And just to clarify. So it is, but it's also the newbie. Sometimes newbies will go on their own, or they're planning. We have a lot that listen to our show that they're trying to figure things out, and they will be overly aggressive with their planning. Yeah. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Well, and on that, I'd also say the other thing that I give advice for or tip is go somewhere close. I've had a lot of people that have, these grandiose visions. I'm going to drive 3 states away, and I'm going to go into this ultra remote wilderness, and they're newer, and something goes wrong, or it doesn't go exactly to plan, and they have to kind of adapt on the fly. Sometimes it's easy if, I'm driving a half an hour from my house. It's an area that I'm very familiar with. That's kind of how I got into it, actually, is about an hour away. And you camp, and it's simple, and it's familiar, and it's, if you have to bail, you're not driving 3 states home. So that's kind of, I totally agree with that.
Okay. I will say that just like from, having this podcast for years, the issue that I've seen more, not even just new people, but with veteran hikers, is a lot of people are kind of afraid to get out of their comfort zones. Like they have a couple areas or maybe even just one area they go to, and the thought of like going states away or going to a new area is very daunting to them. And I think like some of the folks have actually told me that on our Patreon trips, where they're just like, well, you're setting it all up, so all we got to do is show up, so we know that the trip's planned, we know that, you know, some of these details are taken care of. But it's like scary for them. Have you experienced that?
I have. You know, I think there's always a little bit of fear with the unknown, you know, so trying to alleviate some of those stressors or nerves is a big part of it, is being a leader, you know, leading a group like that. So we'll start with normally kind of a tiered system where, hey, the first time we might do, especially with teenagers and whatnot, we're camping in the backyard. You know, we're testing all the gear out. We're doing that kind of thing. The next time we're going an hour away. We're doing an overnight with a little bit of a hike and some mileage. And then the next one, hey, we're going to Red River Gorge, or we're going somewhere else that's more spectacular, and we're going to do 2 nights and a little longer loop. So you kind of have this way of alleviating some of that because they get some experience. Okay, I know how to tear down camp. I know how to put stuff up in the rain. Oh, now I know how to, you know, hike 4 miles into the campsite and 4 miles out on relatively flat. Okay, now we're going to some elevation, and you kind of build them up. And I find that when you do that kind of gradual approach, they're a lot less nervous. They enjoy it a little bit more, and they have a better understanding of what's coming down the road. So,
okay. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
You know what you're talking. You might be better at me than this. I'm like, we don't camp in the backyard. Like the kids always want to sleep on the trampoline, and then they can't come in late at night because they realize there's like no insulation down below, and then they get freezing. And
well,
anyway.
see, they're learning valuable lesson just being in the backyard. We need an insulated sleeping pad. We need some sleeping bags. We don't like getting bitten up by the mosquitoes, so maybe we need a bug net. You know, a tent with a rain fly. Who knows?
Yeah. FYI, trampolines don't have any R value. Just parent tip for free right there. Okay, so you kind of like reacted to mine. Was it? Did we hit on one of yours, or?
Well, we did actually. So the first one I would say that I always tell people is, you never want to try out your gear on the trail. So you're testing it in the backyard. You might be sleeping in your sleeping bag. You might be putting the tent up and sleeping outside. It's funny, every time if I get a new tent and I put it up in the backyard, my kids are instantly like, "Hey, Dad, can we sleep in the backyard?" So I'm usually not short for enthusiasm, but I do encourage that kind of thing. You know, tear down your tent, pack your pack. A lot of times people think this is strange, but walk around your neighborhood with your pack on. Can you walk up and down the bicycle trail for 2 miles and it doesn't dig into your shoulders or your hips or that kind of thing? So testing out your gear ahead of time, I find, saves a lot of issues on trail where people are often, unfortunately, pulling out things for the very first time and asking me, "Hey, do you know how to set up this kind of tent?" And I have to kind of figure it out on the fly. So that's the type of thing I'd love to see them do ahead of time.
For sure. So what would you say to, like, you talked about like testing your backpack out, walking around the neighborhood. I've definitely done that. What would be your thoughts on testing out your backpack, or just simply training while going to the grocery store? You get your pack on inside the grocery store. You're walking around. What do you think?
Are you using it to, like, as your shopping cart? Are you like putting like tomatoes and pineapple and stuff like that? Bag of rice, that'd probably be a good one.
I think at that point, security's gonna like stop you, be like, you gotta buy that. But
you're hiding a bunch of stuff in there. Yes. Well, you could fit a lot of Cliff Bars, I'm sure, in the back of that pack and weight it down, but they'd probably look the other way.
Yeah.
I've never thought of doing it in the grocery store.
Okay.
But I have done it at the gym. You get some looks a little bit with that, but especially in flatland Indiana out here, where we're at like 600 feet, altitude, and you're trying to train for like a trip out to Colorado, there's not a lot of vertical here. So there's like 2 places in the entire state, and I've been to both of them, and they're not that great. So I get on the treadmill at the gym and load my pack up and just put it on incline, and it's fun as that is, I walk for 45 minutes or an hour. So
so when you say you put your pack on in the gym, you're not talking about like bench press. Like you're not like laying down with your pack on, trying to use your pack to thrust the weight up
Yeah,
faster?
I just
Okay.
curls with the pack.
Okay.
It's great for
I'm
the
just
biceps.
checking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
Uh,
I'll do that just to train the legs, get a little bit of extra, getting used to the pack, where the pack rubs. Am I
mhm.
packing it correctly? Is it comfortable? When you start sweating and all that stuff, some of these packs have a little bit of airflow, some of them don't. You kind
Right.
of learn all that stuff about your pack before you get out on trail.
Okay. Well, all right. I like it. Uh, okay. My number 2 is like give them a gear list, but keep it to the basics, keep it to the essentials. All right. And so, like, you want them to, obviously, like, if they're new, you might lend them some gear. They might bring some of their own gear. It's okay if it's not the best gear, but just try to keep it as simple as possible so they're not overwhelmed by your massive, extensive, bullet pointed gear list. And so, the
Yeah.
example I have is actually somebody who tried to figure out the gear list on their own. This is somebody who's from my church group. I went on a church trip last summer, which is a whole other story. But he like tried to get ahead of the game, and so he went online and watched like famous YouTubers like Dan Becker, and he probably watched your channel too, trying to figure everything out. And he watches these channels, and the YouTubers come on, they're like, top 10 like gadgets of
Oh,
2023
yeah.
or whatever, top
Yes.
10 like doodads. And so he's like, oh, I can inflate my sleeping pad easily. I can bring this little, knife. I can bring this little thing. And by the time he was done buying all of that stuff, like I think he had one of the heaviest packs of the entire group. And he was one of the most prepared people in terms of like trying to get backpacking knowledge. But as a result, like he obviously really struggled. So
He's
keep it simple, folks.
Yeah. Was he listening to your podcast? You guys just did a
No, I kind
Doodads
of
one, right? Didn't you
I
have a
did a
couple of
Doodads one.
those? Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
that would
hearing
have been
that.
Future from last summer. So he didn't, he wasn't time traveling, but no, I was on the down low. I wasn't like, hey guys, I've got a podcast. I know more than you. I didn't do that, even though like I wanted to. But yeah, you know how when your pride takes over. No, I wasn't that guy. I was just like, hey, I'm happy to help out. What do you guys need? I have any piece of gear you need. I have advice. Like this is probably a bad idea, but like you guys are in charge, so I'm not gonna, like try to create a trip mutiny or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably good advice. I did the exact opposite on the last trip,
Okay.
and it kind of bit me a little bit.
Mm,
Printed off the backpacking list from REI. If you haven't
okay.
seen that, go look it up. It's like extensive. If you packed everything that was on that list, like you're ready to go to Antarctica or something. It's just a lot. So
Okay.
I handed that out, and I handed that to one of the scout leaders and said, "Oh, this is a lot of stuff on here, but there's some stuff that's worthwhile." I later had to go back and kind of eat my words and say, let me actually cross off all the ones that absolutely don't apply to this. Like we don't need,
Revised list.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's pare this down a little bit, because
Okay.
it was more like all seasons. It was like, oh, if
Yeah.
you're going in deep winter, if you're going in, 90-degree heat in the southeast, or
Oh, gotcha.
there was everything. So
Okay.
I looked at that and said, we're going to Colorado.
Yeah.
It's a little more specific. Let's pare that down. Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah. Dang it, REI.
Yeah,
You foiled me for the last time.
but if you're, a company that sells doodads and gadgets and all that stuff, you want to put everything on the list. So
Right.
you'd be totally prepared if you had that list, but it would be a
Kinda.
75
Yeah.
pound pack.
They could come on. They could make multiple lists. This is your summer list. This is your winter list. This is your Antarctica list, whatever.
They
But
could, they could, or you could just
yeah.
check out our content and all that stuff's on there.
Yeah. To be
You don't
honest
need
though,
REI.
to be honest, from what I've heard, that extensive RIA list, I've heard like that could be still like a pared down version of what the actual Boy Scout list is.
Oh, good God. You're not kidding. So they send out a handbook
Yeah.
for Philmont in New Mexico. It's a specific, conditions that you're preparing for, but the list, and they even tell you, which, shame on them a little bit for that, but they tell you, you don't necessarily need everything on the list, but then it
Okay.
just goes through and lists all this stuff.
Right.
So a lot of times we're getting parents and teenagers that they're doing this for the first time.
Right.
And how do they know, and I feel for all the people out there that are listening that, hey, I'm new to this. I'm trying to figure out what's actually needed and not needed and sort through all that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I totally get it can be a challenge. And when somebody puts together a massive list like that, people are going to show up with every item on that list,
Right.
unfortunately.
And if you say something like you don't necessarily need everything, like, are there optional items? Like, how do you know what you don't need? Like, you're going to have somebody showing up like, well, do I even need a backpack? Can I just bring like a large duffel and get away with that? Like, it's not, you want to make it as clear as possible. That's why I would just say simplify it. So, long story short, just like keep it to the basics, keep it to the 10 essentials, for the most part, and whatever else, like, you might need, if you're the planner, you can help out with the bigger, like the group gear type items. So,
yeah.
All right. What's your next one?
So it dovetails right into that, which is go with somebody more experienced than yourself.
Okay.
If you're a newer hiker, the way that you sort through that gargantuan list of just gook is go with somebody who's done it before and can help you pare that list down. That was so useful for me when I was first getting into this, was trying to find people that had done it before. And sometimes that may be a challenge depending on where you live, of finding people that are outdoorsy and backpacking. And then what do? Just walk up to strangers and say, hey, can you go through my list of gear? That's maybe not reasonable, but
how do you find, so if you live in a place, it's not like big time in backpacking. I've definitely lived in those places multiple times in my life. Like as an experienced person, I'm inviting people, I'm bringing people into the fold, so to speak. But if I'm new and nobody is into this thing, like, do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, there's different things. So, even places like REI, there's going to be other tour companies that actually put together, Patreon trips or whatnot, where somebody's doing the planning for the routing, the cooking, that can help you with the gear, all of that sort of thing. You're going to have different clubs in certain areas. I know here in Indianapolis, in central Indiana, there's a big outdoorsy club that does everything from educational classes, during their meetings, to coordinating trips all over the country. They're doing canoe trips in Minnesota to backpacking trips in Colorado and in Banff and in, the Smoky Mountains, all over the place. So, those are great resources where there might be, 150 people in a club and you get together and, hey, we're teaching a backpacking 101 class, go check something like that out. And the other thing that I point towards people is social media. There's a ton, especially if you look in like some of the Facebook groups.
Exactly.
If you're looking at certain areas or certain treks, you can find a wealth of information of both people and knowledge on where you may be heading.
So I think that's good. I would agree with everything you said there. I think, we actually offer the Patreon trips too, which for the most part, like depending upon fitness level, a lot of times can be conducive to kind of the newer backpacker. I have been throwing around an idea. I'd be curious to get your feedback on this, of doing a Patreon trip next year. So 2024, where it's like specifically for new backpackers, where we're going to carve out the first part of the day, not even start hiking, just kind of going through gear, making sure people understand like how to use everything, and maybe do a little bit of skills, have time in camp to make sure people like know how to use their stove, can make a fire if fires are loud, like this and that. It's going to be a massive effort. And I don't know, I'm not sure what the demand is for that. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, do you end with like you fly them out into the middle of the wilderness and you drop them off and it's like Survivor? It's like reality TV or Alone, and you just see how many survive. Hunger Games.
I would do that with a camera person for sure and make a YouTube video.
I think you'd be surprised how many people probably would be interested in the beginner stuff. I've come across different groups while I'm out on trail that are, hey, there's two guides, you can tell they're doing all the routing, they're carrying all the food and the cooking. And there's 3 to 5 people that are, there for the views and the hike and learning. So I think there's that. And then just being hit up by different people through social media. Like, I love that video you were talking about how to go do this. Have you ever thought of taking groups out? So I get that. I don't know if you get a lot of that, but.
Well, I don't now because I'm taking groups out, like I'm already doing it, but it's not specific to, like, I thought about doing one, like I said, specific to new people. And like, cause you're talking about, if you go to REI, you want to go on like a guided trip. I think last time I checked, like most guided trips, you're talking entry level $1,300. So, I'll tell you what, folks, if you're a newer backpacker and if this idea is interesting to you, reach out, let me know. I'm not saying you're committing to anything, just so I get a sense of like if this is an interesting thing. So I'm just curious. Okay, am I up next, or where do we leave off here? Where are we?
I think you're up for number 3.
Okay, my last one. Here we go. This is something that I am guilty of, even not just with the newer backpackers, but with experienced backpackers. I'm trying my best to get away from this. Is don't just do everything for somebody, or if you're the new backpacker, make sure you're not having it done for you. So as I just suggested with how I would structure the newer, like a kind of an intro trip, like make sure that if you're bringing the new person, that you're teaching them how to do some of the basics, whether it's setting up a tent, starting a fire, using a stove. If they know some of those basics, make sure that they have some sort of a task they're responsible for, some way that they're contributing. Like really, I view group trips as like, you're on a team and everybody has some sort of contribution. So give them a job. And I've been guilty in the past of just like trying to make the trip the most efficient possible. So people are struggling, people are tired, whatever, like I'll take those tasks on, all like specifically the water filtration. And so I end up doing a lot of that. And then I realized that by the end of the trip, like I've done tasks for everybody. Nobody cares. Nobody's even like, sometimes they're not even aware that I've done the tasks for them. Right. And then I'm just like, okay, I was just working hard to make the trip as efficient and like enjoyable as possible, but it made it less enjoyable for me as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they might be missing out just on the opportunity to be closer to do those trips on their own.
Right.
So
right.
giving them the opportunity to learn how to cook on trail, to, whether it's just fire safety and things like that, if you're in an area where you're allowed to have fires, and making sure things are put out, and, all those kind of basic things that we may take for granted because we've done it so many times, filtering water, is a big part of it, just getting camp set up. I've even seen groups where it looked like, oh gosh, there was one that was really cool that looked like it was a rafting crew that was coming down river, and it looked like there was a separate boat of just gear, and they were like all the food, all the tents, everything. We're going to go downstream and set up camp, and when you guys show up, we're going to have dinner, and I was like, well, that's pretty luxurious, and that's probably pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But they might not be picking up a whole lot on that kind of setup, but who's to say I still wouldn't like to do that kind of river trip. So
I don't know if I could. Yeah, I
don't know.
It's like a borderline going on a cruise, right? Where you're just like,
river cruise.
Hey, I'm just along for the ride.
Very true.
Yeah, I don't know if that's my style. I like the adventure side of things for sure, and being responsible for things. But
yeah,
the one caveat I'll say with that one is I always feel like, especially with a group of guys, like there's always the one guy that like, you're like, okay, it's your turn to use whatever, the stove. Let me show you how to use a stove. And then you teach the person, but there's like a 50% chance they're going to break the stove, right? Even if it's like a hard to break stove, like at some point you might just say, I'll just do this for you. Like, I don't want you to break I don't want you to bend the pole of the tent the wrong way, or, you know what I'm saying?
You've got the BRS 3000 and you're going to bend that. Yeah. We had a dad that brought the MSR Whisper Light stove. I don't know if you ever used that with the white gas.
Oh yeah.
They're fun. But I'm not sure that I'm, letting the 14-year-old cook dinner, who's never used it before. So that was one that was like, I'm going to kind of watch over this, and I'll show you how to do it, but I'm still going to be in control of it.
Even as an adult, I've like lit things on fire with that stove. Like, I lit like a picnic bench on fire. I wasn't even backpacking; I was just car camping. Like you put, you try to like prime it, and too much food comes out, and it goes everywhere. So
then it ignites, and you're waiting until it all dies down. Absolutely, it's entertaining. It's interesting.
Right. Okay, what's your next one?
All right. So on the flip side of that, this one is I'm still a big fan, especially with people that are out there for the first time. Bring something that's luxurious. Something. Okay. Now that may be
not everything.
Like you may have one thing, and I like to do it if I'm the leader, the veteran that's going out with a bunch of new hikers, new backpackers. A lot of times I will bring a luxury item as a surprise, and a lot of times it'll be a treat. So depending on the crowd that I'm going with, it might be something like I'm bringing s'mores.
Mm.
I don't bring that backpacking myself.
Mm.
But when I took my 10-year-old daughter, 2 years ago, for her very first backpacking trip, I stuffed s'mores in the backpack. She had no idea it was coming, and we got to camp and, hey, let's do a campfire and do s'mores. And that was probably one of the biggest things that she remembered about the entire trip was those little kind of details that I would never do for myself on trail, but
Right.
I think it's really neat to do. So I've done that. With the adult crowd, it might be bringing bourbon or
Okay.
bringing a cocktail or something like that. But we've also done things like, freeze dried ice cream sandwiches,
Right.
things like that that are just different. I never bring them when I'm solo or in a small group of just avid backpackers. But when I'm going with somebody new, it's kind of nice to spice things up a little bit.
So are you suggesting that like your adult friends don't like s'mores then? They don't want the s'mores.
No, they do. They just want the s'mores with the bourbon.
Okay.
So yeah.
Gotcha. Because I just really want the chocolate, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I just want to
Not
dig
a big
into your
fan of
Hershey bars.
the marshmallows, huh?
If they're fine, and I'll still eat the whole s'mores, but that's the chocolate's the best part. So,
It is.
yeah,
Now, have you ever done like the Reese cups? Have you ever done the Reese
yeah,
cup
those are good too.
s'mores? Do you
Yeah,
like that better than the regular Hershey's or?
I'll take it all. But yeah, if I could just dig, like usually when people bring s'mores, they have like way too many of the Reese's cups or the chocolate. I'll be like, oh, is that an extra one? I'll dig into that.
Yes. Twist
So
my arm. Yeah.
right. But that's a good one. And I just like the concept of contributing something, like whether
Yeah.
you're a new person on the trip or you're the trip planner or somebody in the middle, like do something, contribute something to the group. It doesn't have to be by bringing something. It could be part of the planning process. I'll take care of the rental car if you're going someplace,
Yeah.
but just be a contributor. And I think that's a critical part. And anyway, that's a good one for sure. Okay, so so I'm through my list. You had a few extra. Any you want to quickly touch upon before we jump into the next part?
Well, one thing that I usually advise for new hikers is there's always that hurdle of I want to get into this, but I don't know everything. What should I be buying or not? Rely on people that have done this before, and don't be afraid to borrow gear. I
Mm,
loan gear out all the time for new hikers and backpackers because I just want to get them involved. And I don't want that to be the hurdle. Hey, I don't want to spend a couple $100 just to go do a backpacking trip. Don't worry about it. I got a
right.
pack, I got a sleeping bag, I got a tent, I got everything that you'll need short of your clothes. Like you pick
Mhm.
your clothes, I'll help you with almost everything else that's needed. So I think
Okay.
that's a great thing for newer hikers to consider is if they have somebody that's a little more experienced, don't be afraid to say, hey, do you have a tent that I
Mhm.
either should be buying or can I borrow one? Do you have
Right.
something that I can get by with just for this one trip? See if I even like it.
And I think that's kind of pro tip for trip planners is to keep some of your older gear. So as you're upgrading, it's easy just to get rid of the older stuff. But that's the stuff you want to lend out. You don't want to lend out your good stuff. You don't lend
Yeah.
out the older stuff. Another thing too is if you have a gear list and you're kind of, you got like the master gear list, is make a note of what you're lending out. So at the end of the trip, you can kind of refer back to that and get it back. I've got a family that like for whatever reason, when I lend them stuff, I know it's gonna come back, but it's gonna take some time. And so, like this recent trip in Lost Creek, I got foiled again. They showed up to my house ahead of time. They're like, "We need a backpack, we need a tent." And I was like, "All right, here you go." They're not my go-to backpack or my go-to tent, but I gave it to them. They go, they find another family who has better gear
Oh,
that they're willing to lend them. So they don't use my backpack or tent. They show up to the trailhead. They don't have my backpack or my tent.
they
Now
sold it
I've
on
got
eBay.
they probably sold it,
Yeah.
yeah. It's actually like an old Go Light backpack, but I use it for like rando stuff. And so I was actually gonna use it today to carry around some camera gear for some filming I was doing, and I
At the
didn't have it.
grocery
And I was
store.
like, dang it, they have my stuff still. And so I don't know. I don't know if I just need to like draw a hard line in the sand, like you can't borrow from me. But anyway,
Well, the first time, you give them a
yeah,
pass, right? If it becomes something again that they borrow and you have the
right.
same issue, they get on the naughty list. That's the
And
way it
that's
works.
exactly what I'll tell them is like, unfortunately, I can't lend any out this time. You are on the naughty list. So I've phrased it with them. I tried not to lend them anything this time, but I was like, it's hard to just like, I don't know. I said, I'll share gear. You want to share the stove? I'll
Mm.
carry it. You want to share the water filter? I'll carry it. But I don't want to give you anything but what they asked for. I didn't really want to carry the tent. So anyway, okay. So Lost Creek Wilderness, For those that don't know, in Colorado, like you think of Rocky Mountains, you think of like Rocky Mountain National Park, you think of maybe some other national parks that are here in Colorado. Yeah. But if you do like a Google search and say like best backpacking loops in Colorado, number 1 is typically Maroon Bells, which is out of Aspen, which is an epic backpacking trip.
Love that.
Yeah. Have you done that already?
Yeah. That was the first trip to Colorado, was doing the Fort Pass loop.
Yeah.
So
hard to beat that.
Yeah. Spectacular.
Number 2 or 3 is typically going to be Lost Creek Wilderness, which is not as like, well known outside of Colorado, but it's just got a network of trails, and it's just a cool place to go backpacking. And really what it boils down to is that there's a lot of backpacking in Colorado that just doesn't have loops. Yeah. So specifically Rocky Mountain National Park is terrible with their trail networks. They have 1 loop in the entire park. So anyway, so if you're considering going, that might be a spot to go to.
Yeah.
All right. Did you try anything new out? Any new foods or snacks or gear? Do you have any gear fails? Anything from the trail you can share with us?
Well, let's see. The food, we were pretty lucky that a lot of the food really seemed to work out for our group. And it's always tough. I do groups. I rarely do groups 15 people large. I mean, that was a lot of people to just logistically figure out quantities. How much do we need?
So wait, are you shopping it for everybody?
Well, we broke it up into meals. So for example, like I had one meal where I did bean and cheese and rice burritos. Okay. So my job was to buy all the stuff, dehydrate it, and bring it. And somebody else had a completely different thing. So the 2 meals that I did that, and
I would have no idea how much, like 15 people.
There's like 15-year-old boys.
Yeah, is that 30 tortillas or how?
I just have to imagine they eat twice as much as I do.
Right.
And then we have to go, and then we had to do a food shakedown before we actually went on trail, and we actually counted everything. And we said, how many of this do you think you'll eat? How many of this do you think you'll eat? And we did kind of pare some of that down so that we were closer, but we were okay with having a little extra.
Right.
But we were really worried with being too short. So we do the calculations and then figure out, okay, it's probably just slightly more. We'll have it. And it worked out pretty well. So we came out to almost nothing, which never happens. How many times you get off trail and you're like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
We had a couple boys that had still like a big old Ziploc bag of like snacks because everybody did their own personal snacks. Okay. So we would just do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you want snacks, bring your own. This is how much space you have, because they all have to fit into Ursacks or bear canisters or whatever.
Oh, you brought the Ursacks and the bear canisters. Yes. Okay.
We brought both, and everything had to fit in there. So whether it was your toothbrush and toothpaste or your snack bag or whatever, that we really struggled on, to be honest with you. The first night we were running out of space. I had to pull out my Dyneema bag that I use like out east for running a bear hang. And we were forced to kind of do that in this environment, even though we weren't planning on it, because people brought so much snacks.
Yeah.
We didn't go through theirs enough and police that. But
you didn't want to just shove the food in the vestibule.
We don't encourage that typically. One of the fails on the trip was actually finding a couple boys that were eating snacks in their tent.
Oh yeah.
So we
it's not a fail in Lost Creek. So I'll just share with you. I've done so much backpacking there. It's like my local spot. Never have I seen a bear, and I've never, much less had a bear come into camp, or I've never even heard of anybody having a bear encounter, much less a bear taking food. There's definitely hot spots in the Rockies, in the Sierras, across the nation, where it's like, you need to have these things, but Lost Creek is not one of them. The closest thing we got to that was we passed a couple dudes on the trail they were going the opposite direction. We were going to the place they had just camped. And one of the guys was wearing a shirt that had holes all over it. And I was like, I don't know if it was like style. So, I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm like, what's going on with your shirt there? And he's like, oh, I let my shirt out. Like I hung it out to dry. And at the campsite, like a bunch of chipmunks got at it and they wanted the salt. And so they ate the holes through it. And he's like, so now I'm just wearing this, like, he's like a proud owner of the shirt. And I'm like, oh, well, which campsite? And he's like, oh, it's such and such junction. I was like, oh, that's where we're staying. And we didn't leave our shirts out. We just kind of kept things in the vestibule. No issues. So
now you don't do trekking poles, do you?
If I'm backpacking trips, I'm typically no, but I'm a sometimes yes.
Have you ever
Why?
seen chipmunks get into? They'll eat the cork
Oh, I've
right off
heard.
your trekking poles. I've had
Yeah.
a couple of friends that have had that happen to them
Okay.
at the campsites where they're not using them for the tents. They just go lay
Right.
them out by the cooking area or something like that, and they come back the next morning and they're just the handles are shredded.
Yeah, that
So
doesn't surprise me. Honestly, the only like I didn't even realize that was a thing until it was like right before we started our podcast. We were backpacking in Glacier National Park, and we were awoken by having our backpacks like drug out of the vestibule, and we're like, "What is happening? This is
wow,
freaking us out!" And it was deer that wanted to chew on the straps, and I was like, "Oh, I." And so we had to like shoo away the deer all night long, and that was new
wow,
for me. Yeah, so I
out of
didn't
the
know that was a thing.
vestibules. Wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
it freaked us out. I'm like,
Yeah,
what's what animal? Like typically when you're in your tent, you're not getting like an animal getting in there, like
yeah,
maybe a critter, but not like a big
yeah.
thing. Yeah. So anyway,
That would freak me out too.
yeah. Okay, so you had a lot of food. Was there any?
Yeah.
I mean, like, come on, you're a content provider. Was there any like new gear you're trying out, or is there anything break on you? Do you have any gear drama going on here?
Um, I always wish that I have a little bit more gear drama than I do. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I was trying out a few different things. You know, I brought 3 water filters. You know,
Okay.
hoping one of them would fail or something would go wrong. They all
That all worked.
worked.
Okay.
You know, so I've got the quick draw from Platypus, and I've got the
Mhm.
Sawyer Squeeze, and I've got the Be Free, and they're all pretty new, and they all just worked. So that was kind of, I'm
Okay.
using the new Nikkor NU25 headlamp,
Oh, I almost bought that. I was so close to pulling the
which
trigger.
I still don't think I like.
Okay.
I,
Wait, is
I
that the one with this with the like the thin cords instead of the strap?
Yeah, but it's their version of the thin cords. Like, okay, so I bought the old generation,
Yeah.
which everybody kind of liked. It was like you can buy the one with the strap, or you can go to lightsmith.com, I think it was, and you could buy the super light bungee cord, and that's
Mhm.
your head strap. I actually like that one. I always said, oh gosh, I wish this thing had like a USB-C plug
Right.
and maybe it was a little bit brighter. So the new one comes out and it's got both of those.
Mhm.
I was like, well, slam dunk, let's do it. And I just kind of have a little bit of buyer's remorse that it's fine. It works.
Right.
I just don't love it. And I think
Mhm.
it's some of the build quality. It just feels cheaper.
Right.
And it's not comfortable to wear compared to, so I
The
mean,
other
from a
one.
gear feel from that standpoint,
Yeah.
I've now worn it 5 or 6 trips and I just don't love it. I'll probably
Okay.
keep bringing it because I don't want to bring extra cables and, once everything's on the USB-C. So I've got
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
the Garmin InReach Mini 2. I've
Mhm.
got my phone. I've got the headlamp. They're all on the same plug. So I have one
Makes it
tiny
easy.
little cable,
Mhm.
one battery bank, and it's a tiny battery bank. And I
Okay.
think I was the only one out there that had a battery bank. I've heard your conversations
What?
where like you could have like 12 in a group of 12, but
No, that's typically a problem where I'm like, hey,
right.
like sometimes I won't bring mine on purpose because I know there's enough juice out there for me to
Yeah.
just charge my phone.
I was the only one out there that did. Everybody
Yeah.
brought their phone for pictures, but they
Mhm.
would just put it in airplane mode. And I think we had one guy where his died.
Okay.
And he didn't have, I think he needed a lightning cable and I didn't have one.
Okay.
So, but it was the last day he made it to the end.
Okay.
But nobody else brought a battery bank. I was the only one and all my stuff was charged, but I still walked off trail and had extra juice. So I don't think we needed another battery bank for the group. So 10,000 milliamp, was
Okay.
enough. So,
10,000. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Here's a scenario that I'm dealing with right now.
uh-oh.
So we're
Is
planning
this
a
a
trip.
math question? Is this math?
Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
It could not like mild math because it sounds like you already know like the 10,000 milliamp. Like
Yeah.
that's a pretty significant.
Yeah.
Like that's like a 4 charges on the phone kind of thing at
Yeah.
least. So I've got a buddy who is going on our next trip. We're going to be going up to the Banff area here at the end of this month,
Beautiful.
and so we're talking about kind of talking through your. He's like, I'm bringing a 40,000.
Wow.
40. I know. That's what I said. I said, wow, that's a lot.
40,000?
Yeah. I
I didn't
brought.
even know they made them that big.
I
I mean,
know. I
I know that
know.
like the chargers with the handle where it's like
Right. Right.
it's like you can
Right.
charge run your RV off of this for
Yeah.
4 hours or
Right. And so I said, um, okay, like, what are you using this for? And I think it's, if I remember correctly, I could be messing the story, but I think it's just to charge his phone. I was like, okay, well, you know what? Like, this could be a really good contribution that you have to the group because, like, hey, you're going to have a lot of extra battery power. And so I said, do you mind if I just not bring my battery? Can I just use yours to charge? Because I brought a 20,000 before and I charged multiple people's stuff and we still didn't go through all the battery. So 40,000 is like way overkill.
It's like twice.
Right. So he said, yeah, like, of course, like, as long as I don't need it. Kind of like,
how much
I don't know.
juice do you actually need on trail?
Well, what are you, like, you're not going to need it. So
does he have like a lightsaber?
But he said it in such a way where he's like, obviously my stuff comes first, which makes sense. He's bringing his own stuff.
Yeah.
And so, so anyway, it made me like feel uncomfortable. And I'm like, well, I don't want to take away your battery power, even though I know you're going to probably just use like 5 of the 40,000, like, right. And so now I don't know if I should like borrow from him. Like, what do you do? Like,
well, you probably ask like, all right, what all do you bring? Maybe the guy's like full on photographer and he's bringing like, you know, the steady cam and
no, he's not doing all that stuff. I know he's not doing that.
Well, then I have no
Andy,
idea.
Are you bringing? Okay, with this scenario, Andy, are you bringing your own battery or not? Are you you're a little uncomfortable because he threw that comment there? Are you bringing the battery?
I see. It depends on the group. I would probably, if I know the group and I know the guys that are going, and we pool together and work well, I might bring my own just because I don't want to deal with that.
Okay.
Because you don't want to get out on trail and then like the guy's giving you the eye roll, you know, hey, you know, my Garmin watch needs a little bit of juice. No, sorry, my 40,000 isn't gonna.
He's gonna listen to this, by the way. So maybe this is like a passive aggressive way of like solving the problem.
Well, maybe we should. That'll work. We'll just use a different name. We'll call him, you know, Barry.
We'll call him Tupperware Mike because that's what his name is. So
Tupperware Mike. No, what I would say is I think Tupperware Mike should definitely share the juice with the rest of the group.
Okay.
But if he does, then maybe depending on how long the trip is, you can rotate who's carrying the battery for that day.
Yeah, and I was just gonna count it as like a group piece of gear, and so like he may not carry the stove or the fuel or whatever. And so
absolutely.
And then I just found out today, this is like kind of a side note along the battery power, is we've got Justin Outdoors is coming on our trip.
Nice.
He's like, FYI, I'm bringing my pack's gonna be like 50 pounds. I was like, why is your pack gonna be 50 pounds? And he's like, oh, I just want to see what it feels like to be like a newbie who overpacks. And I was like, all right. Yeah. I guess he's fit enough. He knows, I mean, he's helping to plan the trip. He knows the terrain. But then he later revealed that he's bringing like all of his like hardcore podcast gear. So whatever battery power he's bringing, he's probably bringing like double or triple what Tupperware Mike's bringing. So
do you guys have like a satellite uplink or something? You're going to broadcast?
He's going to record it there, then upload it. Like, I mean, I'm imagining like whatever you've got going on your desk right there, like he's going to have that like miles from civilization. Yeah. So this will be a sight to see for sure.
Well, have you seen the challenges where people do the retro backpacking?
Yeah, I'm not into that, but I've heard
it's like the old gear, the heavy gear, you know, leather, you got pots and pans like swinging from the external frame. You know?
Right.
I've seen those and people are like, let's do that. It's like 72 all over again.
Yeah. No, I thought about bringing one of those folks onto the show, that I'm like, I'm just not as interested as maybe others are doing that. Anyway. Hey, real quick, I want to share real quick some of my gear fails because I had a bunch on my trip, and you can tell me if you ever had a trip like this, because like I was surprised by how many things failed, and it was definitely some user error involved. But we had everything from like I must have sat too close to the campfire. I got a pop. It lands on my waterproof pants. It creates a hole in them.
Yeah.
We had some rain. I know you probably had some rain.
Yep.
My waterproof jacket that I just bought last year must need some like Nick Wax treatment or something. It's like suddenly not waterproof anymore. Like in less than a year, Black Diamond jacket. My stove, my Jetboil stove had the third thing go wrong with it, where like the piezo stopped working a while ago. The plastic housing cracked. Now the little like wire spinny thing to turn the fuel on, like that broke off. So I had to like jury rig it to get it to work. I actually reached out to Jack Boyle and I asked him like, hey, did I get a lemon or is this a common problem? And he's like, basically like, I think you got a lemon, and they actually ended up sending me one to replace it. So kudos to them on that.
What's the normal warranty on theirs?
I don't know. I'm well past it. They were just being nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
cool. And then of course, like I'm really good over the years about not having my sleeping pad deflate. But I'll say like the only time I've ever had it deflate in the night is when I'm sharing a tent with a kid. And then like our dog got in the tent for a little while. And so it had to be, I had the tensor, the Nemo tensor. And so I have night 2 flat sleeping pad. So
I had a tensor dog incident on one.
Okay.
So I totally get that. He just punctured it with his nail and I'm laying on it. So
at least if you saw it happen, at least you know where it is. You can like patch
yeah.
on the spot.
Oh yeah. It was a big one right on like right midsection, right where you'd lay.
Yeah.
So
okay. Anyway, so I had a lot of gear drama, but it all worked out in the end. So
go back to the beginning. What was the like first or second one?
So I had the rain pants, the rain jacket.
So the rain pants, I thought you were going to say with that it was your puffy, because that's like the most common thing, isn't it? Sitting around the fire and you get
I had my puffy
holes
on
in
too.
your puffy. I've got like 3 patches in mine from sitting too close, and going out west where you get a lot more pine, you get a lot more sparks. Where out east, we don't get quite as much of that with the hardwood stuff. So, but still, you get caught sitting a little close to the fire, and you get one of those embers that kicks off, and
we had, and I don't even know if it was that. I'll be honest. Like we had an issue because we had younger kids too, so we had an issue where like I'm telling the other kids to stop doing some things, and I'm sometimes getting supported, I guess. So
pulling sticks out of the fire, and
that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So when I looked down, I saw the hole like hovering above me was one of the kids with it wasn't like a flaming stick, but it was definitely like a stick he just pulled out of the fire.
Yeah.
And so I was like, did that just, and he was like waving it around or like hitting it or something. So I'm like, did that just like,
that's the coolest thing in the world for them.
It is cool.
Yeah.
For them. Yeah.
Not for you with the hole in your rain pants.
I know.
They think it's the best thing. I don't know what it is. It's like your gravitational pull towards sticks in the fire, and then we're gonna run around. And then the coup de grace is when they start having sword fights. That's like the next level where it's like, do you not see where this could go wrong?
Right.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. So. We had the other issue of like, hey, you are allowed to put sticks in the fire. Please do not throw them into the fire, like where it's kind of creating the sparks coming out or the ashes and stuff. So anyway, that's kind of part of going with kids, and just got to watch them. But
it is. We had a rule that if sticks go in the fire, they stay in the fire. So that usually,
shocker.
That one usually ends that issue. But the other issue we'd get is then we would have the one that would sit next to the fire and just constantly add. So it was like, now I've got this huge stack, and I've got, a 6-foot tall flame that's kicking out from the fire pit. And we kind of had to quash that one too. Like, all right, we're going to put somebody else in charge of the fire, because your goal is to like hit the treetops with it. So
you have a timeout, a fire timeout.
Yes. Sorry. Go sit in the corner by the tree.
That needs to be a thing. Yeah. And maybe with some adults too.
That's probably true.
Speaking of kids, speaking of Boy Scouts, I got Boy Scout trivia coming up for you right after this. Okay, so Boy Scout trivia is brought to you by Glacier. Do you have a sweat problem? We were just talking about that earlier this episode. When your clothes get wet, your core temperature can dramatically fluctuate. This can cause hypothermia, heat exhaustion, dehydration, and of course, embarrassment. Vaucluse's ultralight ventilation backpack frame solves this problem. Install on your favorite patch to create a ventilating airflow gap. Check out this ultralight game changer at vauclusegear.com and use blisters for $5 off. Use code blisters, I should say. So, all right. So I got Boy Scout trivia. I got 3 questions for you. In order for you to pass, you got to get 2 questions correct.
All right.
Let's see. I got to have like some sort of punishment if you don't pass. So how about this? This is easy. Maybe a little awkward, but how about like a future episode that we put out, a future podcast episode that you're not on, so not this one. You've got to just share with your followers, like, hey, you should check, like, this is some good content here. Check out this episode about whatever nonsense we got. So
about me failing the quiz. Yeah.
Well, they can listen to this one.
Right.
I'm saying you got to promote a future episode that
Absolutely.
you're not even on. That you're not even on.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, if you pass, I don't know if you've been thinking about this. Is there anything you want me to do as some sort of a punishment? We can reverse it if you want to.
Wow.
I can promote something.
I'm going to think of that. Why don't we go through this, and then I'll have something by the end of the quiz if I win.
Okay.
No, we got to come up with something before that.
Yeah, because I could just veto. I haven't agreed.
No,
anything
at that point you're
yeah,
roped
I'm like,
in.
no, I don't want to do that.
It's tough. You have to carry,
Yeah.
raw
I'm
meat
putting
in
on-
your pack. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I've already done that. I'm putting on the spot. Yeah, we've had stuff where it's like you got to carry something small for me on the next trip, assuming we go on a backpacking trip together at some point, or anything coming to mind.
All right. Well, there's two. One,
Okay.
and I'll let you pick. One is if I win, I come back at some point in time and we do this again in the next couple years. Fair.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. So you're having a good time, is what
I'm
you're
having
saying.
a good time. This is fun.
Okay. All right.
Two is we get together at some point in time in the next few years and we actually go backpacking together. So
All right.
either one of those.
That's not a punish. Those aren't punishments. I'll agree to both those, man. Like I'll throw
right.
invites out. You're a fun guy. Like I'd love to hang out with
All
you.
right.
So, to be honest, like it's kind of a running thing on our show where I do invite folks that have come onto our show more as guests, not so much the guest hosts. And they're usually like, "Oh yeah," and then we actually throw out like official invites, and then we get the non-response. So.
Right. Yeah. Who are you talking to? I remember listening to one of those podcasts where it was like crickets or something like that. You're like emailing, texting, and all of a sudden you got ghosted. Yeah. Well, that happens.
That's why it's weird that Justin's coming with us on this trip, is because I wasn't going to even invite him, but we were like, somebody suggested we invite him. And then within like 20 minutes, he's like, yeah, of course. And I was like, really? Are you sure? Do you know who's emailing you right now? So
yeah. Do you know who's on the, he actually, so we did a live stream, last year sometime. And I sent out to just like 12 or 15 guys, literally like, I don't know, a few hours before we were going live. Hey, we've got a couple guys on the show. If anybody wants to jump in, like, here's the link. You guys can just jump in, say hello for 5 minutes and go. Okay. So Justin jumps in like from the middle of Utah. He's like, I'm on a trip right now. I'm FaceTiming you for like 30 seconds, but I got to go. We'll see you later. And like, I was like, well, that was cool. So
that's super. Yeah.
He's a cool dude.
He's a super cool dude. Yeah. I'm actually really excited to hang out with him. All right, let's get to trivia.
All right, let's do it.
So I like this. We got things on the line, sort of. All right, so number one, here we go. Girl Scouts are known for selling the most expensive cookies in the U.S., maybe the world. Boy Scouts, what are they known for selling?
Popcorn.
That is correct. Yeah, not as popular as the Girl Scout cookies.
No,
but are you guys doing the same thing? Like their style? So Girl Scout cookies are like, let's make our boxes smaller each year and double the price. Like, are you guys doing that with popcorn?
We were the originators of that. So we'll sell a tiny, bag of chocolate covered popcorn, and
like
it'll
5
be like,
pieces.
It'll be like $50.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh my gosh. I actually stopped buying Girl Scout cookies. I was like, you guys, like, I'm already getting price gouged like 5 years ago. Like, I can't do 10 cookies for $60. I just can't do it. So
inflation.
It's more. Yeah. I think it's more than that. So, all right. Number 2, which of the following is not a real merit badge?
Ooh.
All right. So I came up with some.
There's a lot of them.
I know. And I found some obscure ones. So I got 4 options, but one of them I just made up. So one of them is wrong. Okay. So it's A, stamp collecting, B, inventing, C, bugling, like playing the bugle, like that musical instrument, D, Lego architecture.
I would guess, because I'm not positive on this. Those are pretty obscure. The last one, Lego architecture.
Okay, that is correct. You've already passed trivia. You're already 2 for 2.
Done.
I just made that up. Playing with Legos, not a merit badge as far as I know.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
I'm done. See ya.
Okay. All right. Then this one should be like, this is for hitting the home run. Which Pixar movie has a major character based on the Boy Scouts?
Up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did I do Boy Scout trivia? You know your stuff. Gosh.
You could have done Girl Scout trivia. I would have probably not done.
All I know is cookies are Girl Scouts because my daughter didn't do Girl Scouts. So, yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. So I agree to. Well, I'll at least invite you on multiple trips coming up in the future. I'll tell you right now, like this is not for sure. This is not 100%.
All right.
We do have a Patreon trip coming up in 2024, our spring trip, and I'm looking at the Red River Gorge for that.
Oh, love that area. Yeah.
So in your neck of the woods,
it is
not 100% on that, but that's where we're looking. There's a couple of things that I have to get put in place to make sure that happens. I'm trying to get my wife to go and try to get kid coverage and this and that. But and then periodically I'm going to be guest host, especially during our summer season. So you're on the list, man. You're officially on the list. So appreciate that.
Well, I'm just happy to be considered for that list. I did listen to the last podcast where you went through with Derek. He'll be stepping away for a little bit. We're going to have some people on, not because we want to, but because we have to. So I was like, well, I think I'm the next one on. So, wow, that's a glowing review. So I appreciated that. The other one that I really liked is in that episode, you said, we wanted to have Les Stroud. He was busy. We wanted to have Bear Grylls, but he was busy. And I'm next. So like the flip side is I know where you rank things. It's Les Stroud, it's Bear Grylls.
Correct.
Parrish Outdoors.
Correct. That's hilarious. Yeah, no, we don't want a guest host. I'll be honest. It's like guest hosts are fun for me, but like we get feedback like, can you that's great. Like have Andy on as a guest.
Yeah.
But let's have Derek on too. Like they
well, how do you replace Derek? He's he's the one that makes the show. Let's be serious.
He does everything. He does all the work behind the scenes. Like it just doesn't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and everything that he says is right on. When he corrects you on stuff, I'm in his corner. So
yeah, we actually got, based on our recent episode that we put out, what was it, last week? We got a review which already gave feedback on one of his tips, and so I'll wait till he comes back to read that one.
But is it a good one, or is it like
because it supports what I said, not what he said. So
okay, so you're keeping that in your back pocket.
Exactly. But no, it's good to have guest hosts on. It's good to connect for sure. So we would have likely just had you on as a guest, but either way, you're on the guest host list. I got tidbits coming up. I got one tidbit. What do you have coming out? What's coming up on your channel, on your podcast? What do we have to look forward to, and where can we find you?
Andy Parrish Outdoors on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram as well. Facebook, Andy Parrish Outdoors. I do have a little group. We do a little shenanigans talk. We talk about trip planning. Just have a good time with everything outdoors. Videos coming up on the channel will be a couple of these trips. I've actually got 2 Colorado trips. My last fall and the one that I just completed that I'll be working on next.
Okay.
So we just finished putting out Great Smoky Mountains that I got to do with Crow Flies Hiking, with Metro on the Move and Southern Hike, meeting a couple guys and doing some, got my trail name on that loop. So that one's kind of interesting. But
wait, Andy Parrish Outdoors, not your trail name.
It's not my trail name. No, I didn't have one. It's Crown.
Crown.
Yeah. Day one, never met these guys in person. We got to camp, getting my hammock set up, grab some snacks, take a bite. Something falls out of my mouth. I don't know what it is. It was one of my front teeth, which was a crown from almost 20 years ago, and it just shattered on trail. So in that video, all 3 parts is me walking around just talking, and I just, have a shell of a crown left on my mouth the entire trip. So talk about embarrassing first day on trail. What could go wrong? It's a funny story now. So
I was going to guess dental work or something related to the granite gear, crown to backpack.
Yeah.
So that's okay. That's a funny one. I like that one. That's a good one. Okay. All right. So we'll put the links in our show description, both on YouTube and on the audio app. So you can click on that, check out Andy Parrish Outdoors. Andy, it's been a pleasure. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for filling in for Derek, and I had a lot of fun. So thank you, sir.
Thanks, girl.